Hello all you seekers of great dirt and the amazing toys to play in that dirt. Dustin Young here, lone roamer, and today we're going to talk about Norco bikes. Specifically, the Norco Sight C2 and the Norco Optic C2. Both these bikes were provided to me as demo bikes from Brad, the Norco rep here in Northern California. Gave me an awesome opportunity to get a few weeks on the bikes, really understand what I liked, what I didn't like, and to do a comparison of the two bikes. What would you buy? Why would you buy it? Depending on where you ride. The other thing is I'm comparing them to my current bikes. My Yeti SB150, which has a cascade components leak, so it's a Yeti SB155, to my wife's Yeti SB130 lunch ride. And to a fun comparison to my Mondraker f-podium RR, which I built to race in 2020, and there was no racing, so it was just a rad bike to ride fast on trails. That was actually a really fun comparison. There's some pretty good stuff that came out of that. So today, how about we start out with the Norco Sight C2. Size medium, 5'8", that bike fits. What are the important specs? That's a 150, 160 bike. So you got 150 mil of travel in the back, and you got 160 mil of travel up front. Don't know that I'd bother to long stroke the front. The bike had amazing balance. So 77.3 degree seat tube. That's nice and steep. That gives you the ability to, put the pedals down to a little braap up. 63.5 degree head angle. That definitely provides the right geo to braap nicely back down. And then 455 millimeters of reach, which is nice and roomy, man. That's party all day right there. You've got the room you need, throw the bike around, move around, be active, and really crank it out. Which is something you can do amazingly well on this bike. So let's talk about the pros of this bike. The geometry is excellent. That is a spot-on solution right there. You can ride the bike, you feel centered, you feel balanced, you feel like you are in it. There's no issues going on. You're not trying to figure out where you are in space. You always feel nice and over the front end of the bike. So traction, super high. Great suspension. I mean, that Lyrik Deluxe, great front fork. And the downhill select plus that rear shock works really good. Flip the climb switch, pedals really good without the climb switch, but when you're doing the fire roads and the paved roads and you're riding like Auburn, California, that climb switch was nice. And then ride aligned. Ride aligned just works. I mean, you should follow it. And really think about how you ride. I think if ride aligned isn't working for you, maybe you're either underestimating or more likely overestimating your rider ability. And so the bike's either too stiff or too soft. But I really thought about my rider ability. I set it up where they said the front was a little stiff, the back was on the money. And I think for 90% of riders, if they do that, this bike is going to fit, it's going to ride great. You're going to set it up out of the box, cut the bars to where they say, get everything set up how they say, stack height, everything, down the trail you're going to go. The dark purple frame, that silver Norco graphics, that was pretty cool. That bike was really sweet. In the sunlight, that bike was really cool looking. GX components work great. They work, SRAM GX, great shifting, always works. You don't have any problems, and you don't care if you bash it a little bit. You're not talking about breaking carbon cranks, and you can just ride the thing. And for a 33-pound bike, I think the Geo, they did a great job. That steep seat tube, it climbs. It might be heavy, but it climbs. Now, are you going to win any XC races? No. But this is a bike you're just trying to get to the top because you just want to hammer down. And it does that. The other side, let's talk about some cons. The hub engagement on those E13 wheels with those DT Swiss 370 hubs, don't like it. Don't like the hub engagement. Don't really like the wheel. It's a really heavy wheel. I think the idea is they built this like parky enduro. And speaking of that, the Maxxis tires it comes with, a dissector in the back, the Assegai in the front, it makes me think of that song, I Only Ride Park, because that's exactly what it rides like with those tires. So for me, they gotta go. They're like, give them to your buddy who loves to shuttle and call it a day. And then it has a chain tensioner, or a chain guide on the front. And that just sort of seems backwards nowadays. You've got such great clutches in the rear derailleur mechanisms. You got a chain guide and no bash guard. It seems like you want a bash guard and no chain guide. So that seems like sort of an odd thing. I've seen it on bikes, and I just don't quite get that. Nothing would have been fine, actually, versus just having that. The chain doesn't come off. They don't come off anymore. This is not a necessary thing. So let's talk about how this bike rides. It is a monster. I mean, downhill, run it over, have a good time. There really wasn't anything that was too much for this bike. I got to ride it in a few places. I got some rocks, some roots, some wet. I got to take it out and just have a really good time. And nothing bothered. I actually got to ride it after a big rain, and it did a good job. Not with those Maxxis tires on it. I did not want to ride those things. To repeat, awesome bike. So anyway, it was well balanced in the air. This bike has great forward geo. You can really push the bike. As a matter of fact, it's so well balanced that instead of trying to figure out where you are on the bike and managing that process, you figure out how much body English you can lay into this bike and just how hard you can push it. And you don't worry about the bike coming out from underneath you and putting you on the ground. It's really soft in the small bump too. I was shocked because on the SB150 I run a coil, and to say that this bike was really close, if not it's equal in compliance on small bump, that says a lot. I think they've done a great job of working with RockShox to get this suspension set up, and it's really good. The other thing is RockShox is easy to set up. I'll give them that. It was really easy to set up. You didn't have to do a lot. And against, I run a lot of Fox suspension, and against the Fox 36, the Lyrik was smooth, way easier to actually set up. Fox 36, wonderful fork. You're just going to spend some time getting it dialed in. It made the bike well balanced and flow on the trail, right? Let's talk about, I'm going to go back. Let's talk about these tires. They're not awesome at all. They just suck. I've said it enough. Here's why though. The tire combo causes the bike to slow down, literally slow down. I make a joke here. If you think losing all your momentum after you've nailed the corner and just railed the berm is awesome, these tires are for you. If you think pedaling to get fitness on a 10% downgrade because you don't like pedaling uphill, these tires are for you because you're going to be pedaling when you should be rolling fast. They literally impact the bike that much. A front tire with way too much friction, always high rolling resistance, way too much friction, always slows the bike down. And on this, I really noticed it with this tire combination. I am coming down culvert, and I'm just railing. I'd rail a corner, come out of the corner, and the bike would just die. And I'd just have to start pedaling to pick the momentum back up. The problem with that, transitioning between obstacles. It now means that obstacles I was used to rolling into the next one, I'd have to pedal, which means I have to fix my body position real quick for the next obstacle. So the tire combo I don't get. Definitely shuttle combo kind of tire, I think. So I put my Wild Enduros on, my Michelin Wild Enduros on, and the bike just came to life. And then when I put my Michelin Wild AMs on it for riding, when I wasn't riding loose stuff and I got down to just, good pack single track, that bike became really fast. It rolled amazing. Tires make such a difference. And why they put these tires on this bike when it's their all mountain big trail bike and not their, full on shuttle enduro bike, that's up to Norco, but those things definitely weren't what the bike should have come with. Now let's compare the bike to the Yeti SB150 that I have. Okay, both these bikes are bruisers, right? Both can just rip a trail. There's no doubt about it. And they're both really ready to go at a moment's notice. Drops, mistakes, you just manage it. You just roll in, land with the front tire up a little and you'll just get out of the mess, right? They're just there to do that. Thing is, the Yeti is this is a bike that's known to climb, right? Even their big bikes, Yeti's known to climb. I'm going to go back. The Sight climbed as well as the Yeti, and that is a hell of a benchmark to meet because a lot of big bikes I've ridden, you get on them, you suffer to the top. It's a lot of work. It's tiring, but you're doing it for the downhill. The Yeti, I was blown away at how well you could get up there. Felt good still, more energy. The Sight, it did it. So awesome work, Norco, because that is a hell of a benchmark to me, and that makes this bike all that much better of a bike. The other thing, you don't need to do a pile upgrades to this bike to have an awesome bike. I think the main thing, you've heard me, stick, horse, beat it all I can. Change the tires, change the wheels and tires. But change the tires and you're off to the races. And you have a bike that you can just jump on and go really fast. Again, that stability while cornering, it has better stability while cornering than the Yeti does. The 150, you've got to manage that out the back door feeling. You can easily end up putting yourself out the back door on a Yeti. There's lots of other people done the reviews on Yetis, and they were like, well, like I think there was somebody recently said they chose their 130 over whatever other bike. I think it was a Switchblade. Even though the Yeti constantly made them go out the back door and that they had to just force themselves to the front of the bike. But then they were faster and the bike was awesome. And I would agree. But the Sight is so well balanced and you're on the front end that you're going to be faster because you're not going to be working to stay in position. But again, you're really going to be managing that body English. The other thing that the Sight does really well is it's a more playful bike than the Yeti. So maybe that's the coil thing. Maybe it's not. But I've had the Yeti SB150 for a year and 2 months, and it's a plow. I mean, you just and go. And it'll just, the faster you go, the more you plow, the better it rides. But it's not really like a jump and pop and move around in the air and skid and drift bike that well. It handles it, but it's not by nature playful. The Sight was by nature playful. So I think, Yeti focused on racing. You can tell it rides like a race bike. And the Norco was focused on being an all mountain fun bike. And that was real obvious in the riding difference. So, I think I really like that Sight. It's a great bike. Would I change bikes? Maybe. Both are fun. I really enjoyed it. I think if I were going to change bikes, and you'll hear this as I get into the next comparison, it would be the Optic, not the Sight, because something bigger than the Sight would be the replacement for the Yeti if you were going to bash big stuff. The Optic, and I'm about to get into that, is so good that the Sight it puts the Sight in a ride big stuff category. And that's really interesting. And let's talk about that. So I rode that Norco Optic in a C2 in a medium. My wife rode a small. She's 5'2", maybe a little tippy-toed, and it fit her great. And it fit me great. And the important specs on that bike, let's cover that real quick. 125 mil in the rear, 140 in the front, 76 degree seat tube, 65 degree head angle. 65 degree head angle is pretty rad for a trail bike that's got that shorter rear travel. That customer shock, they did some awesome stuff, but 450 millimeters of reach. So it's almost identical reach to the Sight. As a matter of fact, I would say when you get on them, you really can't tell the difference. The Sight puts you a little more on the front end, but the Optic puts you on the front end. The Sight and the Optic feel equally balanced. They feel equally easy in the corners. They feel like extremely similar bikes. And to the point that until you get into something really big, you just don't feel why you need the big bike and the extra bike to haul around. Pros on the Optic. Great reach, just like the Sight. It is an extremely centered bike. We get into that. The Optic or the Sight might put you just a touch in the front, and the Optic, this is a centered bike. You feel centered, you're centered, you're in the bike. This bike is all dialed in that way. That rear shock, it works so good. It climbs exceptionally well for not having a climb switch. You maybe on the fire roads, you're like, oh, that'd be nice. But everywhere else, I just didn't feel the need to reach down there and do it. It's the platform is so efficient, you can just rail on the trail. That 65 degree head angle is fantastic. It's shredtastic, whatever term you want to use, it works. Hands down, it works. And then the Vittoria tires that it came with, They're enduro tires, not trail tires. They hook up amazingly well. I think they're the wrong tire for the bike. Again, I think this trend towards all enduro parts, even on trail bikes, not for me. I guess for others. Those Victoria tires are awesome. I think it's a Mazda, and I actually off the top of my head I don't remember the other one, but they're like enduro kind of tire, real beefy, and you can feel it. You can. It actually makes the bike feel a little heavy. The bike has a great seat tube angle. It can climb. It's not a race-winning XC climber, but it can climb, and it climbs a lot faster than my Enduro Bro Yeti. No questions asked. It'll kick that thing's butt straight up the mountain. So, and it climbs technical stuff really well. My wife is dead proof of that, and her riding on it was spectacular. Okay. The other thing is, this bike is ready to party all the way back down. Drift it, slide it, smash it, turn it, jump it. It's just in. It's into party. It's ready to go. This bike has got playfulness, rowdiness written all over it, and that rear shock and everything else they did, just stinking spectacular. Okay. What are the cons? I can't quite figure out why they ship the C2, the Optic C2 out at 32 pounds. And that's with the pedal and bottle cage on it, because I did all that. I weighed it myself, Park Tools, weigh all kinds of bikes. It feels like they basically thought, well, we'll just make it an enduro bike and just short travel enduro bike. And it's a trail bike. And so it's not that hard to fix that. You can remedy it, buy a C1. You're gonna drop to, I think, 28.9 pounds. But right there, the C2 is priced so well and it's in such a good place. At 30 pounds, I just think this bike would have been done just as it sits, and they would have done nothing but sell them. And the C1, at 28.5 pounds is a great bike, and you're getting into more, higher end components, but it does feel heavy, and it might be the tires, and it might be the wheels. I don't, the GX components can make things get a little heavy. The bike overall is a great bike, but I'd say from a con, that weight's there. And then the other thing, an aluminum rear triangle on a trail bike, I think with the aluminum rear end, it makes the bike feel even more heavy. My wife actually noticed it in her riding because she's a smaller rider. I didn't notice it as much, but she definitely noticed it, that was happening. And I would say you've got an aluminum rear end, an aluminum rear wheel, an enduro tire, and GX stuff. It just starts to make the bike have a heavy feeling back end. So like, what was her main comment? I don't feel like I can just pick it up and move it over as easy to avoid obstacles. So I think, there's something to be there. One of the most immediate fixes is I threw on my WeAre1 carbon wheels. That particular wheel is a Faction on the rear and a Union on the front, and with the Wild AM tires that has XL1 cassette, and that's it. That made a huge difference. So the aluminum rear triangle became a little less heavy, but that upgrade was huge right away. Made a big difference. Made a difference on the bike road and everything, right? But as it comes, that is a little heavy. The other thing, the internal routing for the cables is it's nothing. It sucks. You got to fish everything through, and the reason I know all this is because I sort of ripped the bike apart and put all my really cool race parts on it to see what weight I could get it down to if I wanted to a ripping fast light trail bike. The answer to that is pretty light, and putting those cables back just wasn't any fun. So I almost had to pull the bottom bracket. I did manage to fish that. That was just the right tools and luck and some ingenuity of a buddy of mine and I getting that out of there, getting that dropper post cable back up in there. The reason I took it out, I put an access dropper on. The thing is, the rear shift derailleur cable, that we ended up taking the rear pivot bolt out so you could actually move that through. So they're not the modern just pass through, cable goes right through and you're done. So that part is a little too bad, in a modern bike. But if you're pulling that stuff out of your bike all the time, it's bike mechanics will dislike it. Maintenance time will be a little extra time, but it's not like a critical issue in the bike. The bike's an amazing bike otherwise. It's just sort of a nitpicky con I have. something interesting that happened with this bike. I was faster on the downs when we were riding trails than on my 150. And this is timed, known. I'm PRing stuff that I was surprised to see the time when it was a PR. And I had to think about that, because when you're comparing it to 155 millimeters of thoroughbred race enduro bike that's built like a thoroughbred race enduro bike, you sort of question the idea of what you've built. Now, I'm not sure that it would be faster, because I didn't get the chance. Snow had come and I missed some of the really big stuff, and so I didn't get a chance to really smash them in Tahoe or take them on a long trip, like Ashland or something like that. But it was surprising how fast Sly Park on the downhill stuff. It was really fast, and it handled all those drops and all of that really well. And I started in that loose end of summer stuff here, and then it rained, and so I got Sly Park in the high traction, and it was just faster. And I had to spend some time thinking about that, and the conclusion I came to, you're so centered on the bike that you're not thinking anymore about your body position. I talked about this on the site. You're thinking about your body English, and you can correct really fast with body English. You can push the bike, you can drift the bike, and it's gonna hook up. Tires matter there, but you know what's happening, and it just feels good. And I love my 150, but that out the back door feeling is not uncommon with that bike. And so you'll see something coming, and you'll actually think about, okay, get set up and make sure you're on the front end, because this next set of corners, you got to be on the front end. You don't, that goes away, and I think that's why that experience happened, right? And so that brings up, cornering. The bike's an incredible, it corners, it is incredible how well it corners. I mean, just amazing. So you're really going to be able to just lay it down and go for it and know that you're going to come out doing pretty good. And that goes back to what I just talked about. You're centered, body English, get set up right, go. Okay? So you start to manage where you're at your limit as a rider and where your tire limits start to come in. So depending on the tire you got on it, right, it's going to become a tire limit issue. So what did I do to make it a trail weapon? I told you I got it to be pretty light. Axis, all axis. Axis rear D, axis shifters. I didn't change brakes, and I didn't change the GX crank because I didn't feel like popping the bottom bracket because I don't run any other dub cranks. But I got the bike down pretty easily to 28 pounds, and that's without changing really heavy brakes out and to like a set of SRAM Guide Ultimates or something like that. And I didn't change crank out, which going all the way up to an XL1 crank or XX1 crank, or I actually run even lighter than that on the Mondraker in an E13 race crank. You'd kill a lot of weight. 26.5 pounds wouldn't be unreasonable. Do I think at 26.5 pounds I bruiser the bike real hard? No. You might break a part or two, but at 27.5 to 8 pounds, so a couple more heavy duty parts, I'd just go smash the living crap out of this bike. And that gets into, right, and it's 27.5, 20 pound trail weapon. And I don't mean 28 pounds when you take all the crap off and hang it. I mean pedals on it, bottle cage on it, how a bike is ridden, right? I don't care about weights the other way around. That's all for marketing and selling you stuff. I'm talking about how you ride a bike, what its weight is when you're riding a bike. At 28 pounds, this becomes a bike that 90% of people could go out and shred. It'll climb good, it'll descend amazing. This works, right? And then, you're gonna go do lots of trails on this bike, and you're not gonna feel like you need to take another one. And I think that's something that's important. So really, if you say, who's this bike for? Most people. You'll see a lot of guys shuttle in Auburn, and they got all these big bikes. And this bike is gonna ride as faster than any of those bikes. You're not gonna need to be on, the biggest travel bike you can find with, big Enduro Bro tires. And you're gonna go out there and crush it in a place like Auburn, California. Where else? This bike could kill it in Ashland. Ridden Ashland, this bike could kill it in Ashland. This bike could be awesome in Oak Ridge. I took the Yeti to Oak Ridge. There's so much climbing, so much awesome downhill, so much climbing. That bike was not fun from that perspective. And then it's like the SB150. It's fun to ride in Auburn, but it's sort of boring to ride in Auburn. It's sort of a mixed bag. Maybe if you ride in Mammoth Bar, but other places, you do it once, it's great. After that, you're like, eh. And then, I'd ride Downeyville on the Optic. I'd ride Big Chief and Truckee on the Optic. If you're somebody who's gonna ride Martis a lot, you need the Yeti. You need the Sight, the Yeti or the Sight. The Optic, all of a sudden, with all those big drops and rocks, and it's gonna be in over its head. That's when the bike gets in over its head. Now let's talk a little bit about against my wife's 130 lunch ride. She PR'd everything on the Optic. Every single thing I can think of. I mean, it was incredible. Some of the things she PR'd in the downhills was like 20 and 30 seconds. Now, her Yeti SB130 lunch ride is like built to the nines. This is a go fast, ride awesome, 28-pound, trail ripping bike, rear coil, Seekis on the front. This bike is built to be ridden hard. And she took a factory C2 with nothing more than she has faction wheels with Wild Dam tires. That was the change again. And just shredded. And we only changed it to that after she came back and said, oh, these tires feel a little heavy. The rear end feels a little heavy. Put her wheels and tires on, and that problem just out the window, gone. And she rode that bike 3-4 days a week. She loved it. She didn't want to give it back. It says a lot about a bike. Even more so, the Geo fit her so good. And we're not talking about a slouch of a rider, by the way. I mean, my wife's been riding maybe a couple years now, real consistently. So she didn't start till later, but she's already ridden like Gypsy and things like that, and North Star, ridden all the wooden features. I mean, she's got good balance. She can ride. And for her to come back and have that much of an improvement says that the bike fits really well. And the ride-align thing, perfect for her. You just had to pare it down a little because they don't quite get to her weight, but she's 110 pounds, man. And I mean, the suspension set up so easy, and it worked, and she used 100% of the travel. And I can't get to 100% of the travel. The coil is on there, so we are getting there in the rear end pretty good, but the front end, I mean, I've done the Seekis, I've done everything you can to get away from some of the progression of air to get her through the full travel. And I can set up suspension pretty good, and we can't get her through the full front end. And now that she's back on the Yeti, she's not getting through the full front end. So, they did something really great. She's 5'2", the small fit perfect, easy standover, 100% of the travel. My wife, I call it crashing. She calls it falling over. When she'll get into some technical stuff, over she'll go, right? And it happens. I mean, she's a new rider. She's learning that stuff, and sometimes she falls down. She didn't do that once. She dabbed a couple of times, but she never went down on this bike in 12 rides. No fallovers, no nothing. I gotta say, that is really impressive. Really impressive in ways that say more about the bike than anything. I mean, balance must be just spot on for that to be true, okay? For me, the medium 5'8", right aligned, they had the bars slightly wider than I actually run my bars. If you want to see a video on bar width and power, there's lots out there. I could make one. So if you want to see one, I can make one, show you sort of how to get your bar width right. And then the minor adjustments. I think, sidetrack. You buy 800 mil bars, you leave me 800 mil, you put them on, that's super cool. Problem is, that's like buying an extra large bicycle at 5'6". You worry so much about all these fit. You want videos about all this fit. You want to understand how a bike fits, and then somebody goes out and they buy these monster bars in the shortest stem they can find, and they're not not focused on their fit at that point. The other thing is crank length. I'm a 165 crank length guy. I'm 5'8". I'm not that tall. Those cranks are, from the math, really good fit cranks. So, side notes on that, but think about the Rich Rude 760 bars, shorter 680 bars. Nino wouldn't run 680 bars if they were slower. He's not going to go loose. So, I mean, those are things to think about. It's sort of, he's a little guy. That's where all his power is. He doesn't run narrow bars for any other reason than he has the most control of his bicycle at that time. Okay, so you know, those are sort of the fits. I'll tell you, the optics are amazing. They're so much fun to ride. That is such an amazing, I can see why it's won awards. My review is probably nothing special in this arena. The 2021 Optic, the new rear end, get a little bigger tire in it. Super amazing bike. All right, quick fun fact, or quick fun comparison, I'm sorry. Against my Mondraker f-podium RR downcountry build, so 120 fork on the bike. Fully custom built bike from the ground up. I'm going to do a whole walkthrough on that bike. It's a super cool bike. It is 23 pounds, kitted up, ready to drag race it out. It is a badass bike. Comparing that to 125, 140 bike, 100, 120 bike is pretty funny. They don't belong in any category together. But the thing is, the Mondraker makes a really nice trail bike. It is a fast trail bike for most trails until they get rowdy. Once it's rowdy, it's you're going to get beat to death. But for a lot of trails, for the smooth, flowy, fast stuff, it's an awesome trail bike. Geometry's great. It's slackish for a cross-country race bike. And all that stuff's pretty rad. So it was a fun comparison. Can you guess which one was fastest uphill? Yeah, it was the Mondraker. And it wasn't by small amounts. I mean, we're talking about a bike that just crushed it up the hill. But the Optic's a great trail climber. I mean, it'll climb. It's a great trail climbing bike. And it's not a race bike, but again, it's a great trail climber. So, you know, yeah, the Mondraker also wins in weight. You would never get the Optic down in weight like that. The frame's not light enough. It just isn't there. It's a heavier frame. But it's also meant to take some serious abuse. The other thing is the flat and undulating stuff. You know, the stuff you ride that you go down, you rock it back up, you got all the turns and berms and stuff. The Mondraker is faster on a straight roll. But I run full XC race tires that just roll like crazy on that bike. So it's not really fair because it just has less rolling resistance all around than the Optic. So I decided to put the same wheels and tires with the Wild AMs on the Mondraker that I put on the Optic. And then they were same. As a matter of fact, the Optic is a lot more fun. It jumps, it feels smooth, it feels balanced. You want to hit everything and you're railing the crap out of it. And the Mondraker is just fast. If you're going to race, Mondraker. If you want to play, Optic. So that was kind of fun, right? You got to see the difference. I'm not saying the Mondraker's not going to get downhill fast. At the bottom, you're just going to feel ass whooped and tired, whereas on the Optic, you're going to be like, where's the next hill? I need to do some more downhill party time. And then this is obvious. Downhill, the Optic just crushed it. I mean, the Mondraker's fast, but you are beat, and that's what it is. But the Optic, you're just raging down those hills, having a good time, jumping everything you can find. And so it was a lot of fun to compare these two. Again, it was more for fun, and in case you want to know what it's like, it is not an XC bike, but it is not a anything like the 150 where it's a bruiser and you're you know, worried about all that uphill. So who are these bikes for? Which one? You know, let's knock this out real quick. The Sight and the Optic are great bikes. If you ride bigger trails, lots of drops, wood features, big gaps, you're hucking stuff. You're hucking to flat. You're raging rock gardens with, you know, and you're skipping big rocks and you're just going at it like a wild person. You probably should buy the Sight because that Optic is not going to be any fun. It's going to take you down. And it's a killer bike once you change the tires. But for 75 or 80% of riders, man, if you're riding trail and flow, and you're even going to get some big jumps in on this bike because jumping's about landing, right? Land right, jump right, you're good. But you're not doing super harsh stuff. This is amazing. This bike just rips the trails. It is awesome. These are both amazing bikes. Norco, congratulations, 2 killer bikes. I know this video is pretty long, but I wanted to really get all of it into one video. You can jump around, sort of get the comparisons where you see fit. But I wanted you to get an idea of the scope of these bikes and where they fit in the world against lots of other bikes and what makes them what they are. So I hope I really accomplished that today. If you like this video, please hit like. If you like this review, please subscribe to my channel. A lot of my reviews will be a lot shorter and more specific. This one, I just really wanted to talk about these bikes against other bikes. I'll tell you, a Norco Optic is on my list, and I am pretty sure I will be riding one, and so will my wife. I don't see any reason why I wouldn't at this point. And what bike I'm going to sell or get rid of, that's to be seen, but the Yeti might go away because I'll look for something even bigger and more bruisey since I've got an optic that's so capable. Hope everybody had an awesome time. Again, Dustin Young, Lone Roamer, and I hope you guys have an awesome week.